Hey, it's Joe McGovern here at TheWrap Studios at the Toronto International Film Festival, and I'm very pleased to be here with the creative team of the movie Sketch, which made its world premiere yesterday. Writer-director Seth Worley and Tony Hale, who's the lead. I think, is this one of your first lead film roles?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
We all know you from, you won 2 Emmys for your work on Veep,
Hmm.
a show that continues to be relevant with every passing year,
Yeah.
and Arrested Development, of course.
Hmm.
Now you guys have known each other though.
Hmm.
I've heard for a while.
Yeah.
How long has this friendship been a thing?
Too long.
2011.
Yeah.
I had a script that had in development. We were attaching actors, and Tony and I got along really, really well. And I hope it's okay. I'm sharing this. He sends me an email afterward. Is like, I hope this isn't condescending. I know you're fairly new. Like, this is a big new thing. I'm so excited. It's so exciting to see. An exciting project like the script we're talking about. And he said, if you need anybody to talk to, I've been in this business a long time. I've had a shitload of therapy.
Shitload.
Consider me a resource. And it was, unfortunately for him, exactly what I needed at the moment, actually. And we've been friends and in touch ever since. Yeah.
And this story about 7 years ago, Seth had the idea from a personal experience that actually the first 5 pages of the script is kind of right out of something that he experienced. But he told me the idea, and we just really played with it he wrote the script and then back and forth with ideas for about 2 years, and then just trying to get financing and in and out of producers, and then took 7 years total for it to make.
So let's talk about the idea.
Yeah.
I was at the premiere yesterday.
Oh, wow.
It was such a crowd pleasing experience for the audience. Love to see that. Have a film that's so much fun, but also very emotional, very very heartfelt. Maybe Tony, if you want to, because you were the one who read the script and had to sort of take this in. What is the concept here?
Yeah, we describe it like Jurassic Park meets Inside Out. And just the simple story is not simple, but the story is my wife passes away, obviously my daughter's mother, and my daughter is dealing with grief. And she's drawing these just atrocious pictures. And Seth can explain a little bit of how that kind of idea came about, and then they come to life. And it's a really fine line. What Seth does so beautifully is obviously the stakes could not be higher with loss, but just the way the comedy is woven throughout and how the tension is kind of balanced, and you take air out of the balloon in the humorous ways. And it's just a really beautiful orchestration that he has done with it. So, but yeah, Seth can describe like a little bit how that came to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was born, the themes of the movie and the prologue of the movie stripped straight from something that happened to my sister in fourth grade. As she drew a picture that got her in trouble. It was a comically violent picture of her teacher getting pelted with arrows. And she had been in this kind of negative feedback loop for a while, getting in trouble and feeling terrible about herself. She had undiagnosed ADHD at the time. And she just was in this negative feedback loop of just getting in trouble and feeling bad about herself, getting in trouble. And she drew this picture, had to go see a counselor. And the counselor said, "Did you really want to see this happen to your teacher?" And my sister was like, "Well, yeah, that's why I drew it." And the counselor, yeah, which, I mean, the boldness of that was incredible. But then the counselor was like, "Well, then I think you did the right thing. I think that drawing this was a much healthier choice than doing it." And I was only in high school or middle school at the time. And I just remember thinking, when I heard that, like, what a badass thing to say to a kid. Like, this thing that made everyone scared of you was actually an evidence that you were a good person and making healthy choices. And I carried that into adulthood, just thinking that's the kind of parent I want to be, until my daughter brought home pictures full of blood and creatures and weird amount of parent death. And I'm like, oh my God, I failed her. She's broken, and she's a serial killer now. This is just what's happening in our life. And that contradiction, the way that it's able to like both be exactly like my full force, like belief in the worldview can be that contradictory. I found really writable, and especially writable for Tony, who we were friends at the time. And so, yeah, that's where that came from.
No, when you were writing, you knew that that there would be a visual effects element in the film, and it didn't have to be perfect because the visual effects are based on
Bingo.
her sketches and her notebook. which are a whole thing that we should talk about, just in developing those and getting those in there. But how did that give your imagination some freedom writing this, knowing I can really kind of go wherever I want with this?
For one, it's intimidating because if you ask a kid, any kid, draw me a monster that does something interesting, you're going to get the biggest, widest variety of things, right? And so on one hand, it's like blue sky, anything goes, and you want those restrictions. And so you kind of just start saying, I'm going to stick to like first stuff I think of. What are the themes of the story? What are the events that happen? How can they be reactions to those? And then once you set the restrictions, then it's like, yeah, like you're right. Like the only way that this could be easier for us is if she dropped a hard drive of unfinished visual effects shots into the pond, and then it's like we're done.
Right.
Yeah. But we also what was great about though is the idea that we could have the monsters be made of whatever she drew them with. So if she used crayon, they could be made of crayon wax and they melt in heat. If they're drawn with chalk, then they haze up a room with chalk dust, and that allowed us to like visually ground them into the scene more and create something that we kind of hadn't felt like we had ever seen before.
It's also a beautiful effect of a butterfly, a yellow kind of pastel, I guess, against the window. So it's not all, I mean, that's there's a benevolence as to these creatures as well. We got to talk about the kids. Now, Jack and Amber are the character names, and also their friend who's so good.
Bowman,
so great.
But I know that it's this, working with children, everyone kind of knows that it. I think you've mentioned, Tony, that you sort of breathed a sigh of relief when you realize, okay, this actually is going to work, because you never know.
Yeah, and it's yes, you never know, but it's also they're so young, so dealing with something like these high stakes of grief, like I don't know, it's a tough one. And our casting director, Jessica Sherman, really brought us these fantastic choices of kids that were kind of had old souls, and they were very grounded and their performances very organic, but at the same time didn't miss the play. I think as adults, as an actor, the older I get it, you can kind of forget about the play, and there was a real freedom to them. But yeah, I mean, it's really tricky, but I also get, I mean, me as a kid, when I was performing as a kid, I was very kind of on and I liked the broad, but to find kids that are really kind of grounded, it's a real gift that we got them.
It's like someone along the way told them, you're enough. You don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. I never knew that. So I was just trying to do that as a kid.
And for the kids, because the two of them are dealing with the parental loss that is a theme of the film, but also how did the kids react to working in this VFX environment? Because I'm assuming that like adult actors, well, like Tony, they had to use their own imagination on the set with a tennis ball or whatever it is that's there to mimic as a placeholder. What was that like, directing kids to navigate through what was eventually going to be the scene?
Not very difficult, because the thing is, if you don't give an actor another actor to play off of, but you say you're going to add one later, that becomes that actor's responsibility to fill in that performance on the day before you ever get a chance to. And I think it's important to keep that in mind and remember that, and give them and allow them that freedom, and pay attention to the choices they're making. We talked about this a second ago at the last screening Q&A we just did, where I would tell Tony or Darcy or the kids, like, here's generally where we're going to put the monster. Here's what I think. Well, here's what's going to happen. Here's your action. But paying attention in post to exactly where their eyes go, and they might add a little thing where they look at something right here that I have no idea what they're looking at, but what can that be now then? What can chip off of the monster we can put there? What can the monster's performance actually do in response to that? And with kids, it's just play. It's imaginative play. And they're going to imagine the coolest version that you could ever come up with. Yeah. So it's just listening. It's listening to what they're doing and paying attention.
Before we finish up, I just want to point out, as I mentioned, that it premiered yesterday in the afternoon. So I'm curious, as the two of you, what have your last 24 hours been like?
It's been 24 hours. It's not still yesterday.
Because I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety that goes into this. Just releasing something because now it's most of your job is finished now. It's up to the audience.
Yeah.
But what has this been like?
I mean, I'm really curious about yours. It's just been super emotional. Like, after a 7-year journey, and really just both believing in this idea for so long. And, with that process comes a lot of frustration, a lot of, disappointment, and someone falling out and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of encouraging each other, and to see it come to life and see an audience's reaction. It's really intense.
It's been pure joy.
Yeah.
We had a moment just now at the screening. We had to step out and then come back, and we came back and watched the whole third act from the sides. And I was telling that audience afterward in the Q&A, the movie is a clear influence of Jurassic Park, and that was a movie that I saw at 9 years old and saw as many times as possible, and would take my family members to go see it. And I realized I was watching that family member more than the movie, and kind of taking credit for their entertainment experience. And that's the feeling that I've chased ever since to make movies, is to provide that experience for people. And then I caught myself today at the end of the screening, kind of turning and looking at it's kind of creepy, but watching the people watch it and seeing their reactions. And it was like this little Sammy Fableman moment, who I met today. I met Gabe
he's
today.
Here in Saturday night. Yeah.
It was like this, totally Fableman's moment of like flashing back and forth between me watching it as a kid and watching the person with me, and me watching these people watch my movie. It's been pure joy. That's what this past 24 hours have been.
I mean, all I can say is congratulations, and really thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for making this and releasing it into the world, and best of luck with the rest of your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Fun.